Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is professional real estate investor David Campbell from HassleFreeCashFlowInvesting.com. I really appreciate everyone's time and attention in learning this very fascinating and lucrative subject, making money as a private construction lender. And this is part two of an educational series, part one being nuts and bolts of making money as a private lender. And this is a subsidiary or a secondary, a deeper look into the topic with the specialty of being a construction lender. As the owner of a production home building company, I have a lot of experience in both being a borrower of private money and as a real estate broker. I've also originated several construction loans and rehab loans to other borrowers. So if you're watching this broadcast and you feel like this is something that you would like to do either as a borrower or as a lender, we would be very happy to talk with you. I'd be very happy to talk with you about opportunities to borrow or to be a lender, an investor in a private loan for construction or rehab. So this event is about building relationships, sharing ideas. There is no sales tip, no sales pitch here, and very important that this is not investment, legal, or tax advice. And a big disclaimer that this seminar is not a substitute for getting your own professional advice. So we will talk a lot about the mechanics of doing a private loan and being a borrower and a lender, but it's really important that you retain your own legal and tax advice in putting your own deal together. So very quickly about hassle-free cash flow investing. Our company is about helping you get a higher return on investment with less money, time, and hassle invested. And when you become a passive investor, you have less time and less hassle so that your ROI goes up. Being a construction lender can be very passive. It's much more passive than actually being a developer yourself, and yet the profits can be very lucrative for people willing to be a construction lender. So when you are doing the construction, that's me, I own a construction company, we are the equity. We put up our own money and we put up our own property as collateral, and we own a deed to the property. And when you become the lender, you get a deed of trust. As the borrower, I give you a little piece of my property, which is the rights of the lender to foreclose, and that's called the deed of trust. Some states it's called a mortgage, or sometimes it's called a deed of trust to secure debt. But your asset as a lender is the note and the deed of trust, which allows you to foreclose. There are a lot of advantages to being a construction lender in particularly. It's passive. You can get passive income as a construction lender. You can get cash flow either monthly or quarterly or annually. However you want to set up your cash flow, there's a chance to make cash flow. It's easy to beat the return on investment from CDs and bonds. The rates for being a construction lender are very high. Right now, you could very conservatively earn 10% annualized interest as a construction lender. When you're a construction lender, your borrower is a developer, and that developer oftentimes has a perpetual need to borrow money. They're a repeat borrower. So when you have a repeat borrower, that gives you a higher occupancy rate on your money. The longer your money is lent out, the more days per year your money is lent out. That means you're getting a higher occupancy rate on your money, which is good. That improves your return on investment. Working with a professional borrower like a developer makes life simpler, and there's less emotions. Oftentimes when you're doing a private loan, if the borrower is distressed, then you've got some distress emotions involved. When you're lending to a company that is in the business of borrowing, using your money for development, it's a business transaction, and oftentimes the relationship is much more professional. Higher rates of return, as we said, even higher than what you could expect potentially on doing a private loan, especially when it's risk adjusted, right? When you look at the rates of return you could earn as a construction lender relative to other avenues, I feel very comfortable being a construction lender, and we do lend our own capital as well for construction lending. Predictable rates of return. When you make a construction loan, you know exactly the rate of return that you're going to get. It's listed on the note document. And so that's a predictable rate of return. It's an opportunity to learn both about lending and about construction. So if you're interested in those topics, being a lender is a pretty conservative way to start in learning about construction. Relationship building. When you loan to a developer, then that relationship with that developer could result in other business opportunities. Maybe they can partner with you on a future deal to acquire land. Maybe that the relationship is going to build something that you might want to buy, and you might either get a preferential pricing or terms, or just timing opportunity to work with that developer. Also, when you're a lender, in construction lender in first position, your equity is ahead of all of the developer's equity. And so you have the most secure position in the development. The returns are passive, and you have the opportunity to make loans that are sometimes as short as 3%, 3 months, and sometimes as long as 12 months. And so you do get those short-term loan opportunities. Sometimes when you're making a short-term loan, the disadvantage is you've got turnover, meaning you've got to go through the documentation more frequently, which can be a hassle. But it also gives you an opportunity to use idle cash or excess cash. Maybe you don't want your money out for years at a time, but you've got some cash, you're planning on doing something in the near term. This could be a great interim use of cash until you find a property, etc. The documents that you're going to process when you are a construction lender, the two different kind of documents. One is a unilateral agreement, which is an I promise. The other is a bilateral agreement, which is you and the borrower promise together. And so the note is a unilateral agreement. The borrower is saying, I promise to pay you. And as a lender, as long as you funded the loan, that's the only obligation you've made under that note. The deed of trust is, again, it's a unilateral agreement. The borrower says, I promise to pay you back, and if I don't, you have the right to foreclose upon me. That's a unilateral agreement. So a bilateral agreement is when the two parties agree to do something together. So in the note, only the borrower signs. The deed of trust, only the borrower signs. The construction loan agreement, which is unique, is a bilateral agreement. The lender signs it and the borrower signs it. It's a contract that works together both ways. And we'll talk about that contract a little bit later. So the note, there's the borrower and lender, and it specifies the interest rate, which is earning the money, or what rate of return you're earning on your money per year. The note says when the interest payments are due and when the principal is due. And so that is the borrower's promise to pay. That is the asset that you get as a lender, is that promise to pay. The deed of trust is the collateral that backs up that promise. And so a promise is nice, but it's much, much, much better if it's backed by collateral. The parties in a deed of trust would be the borrower, the lender, and then the trustee. The trustee is a party that's selected by the lender, and you can usually change the trustee at a future date. So the trustee is someone that represents the lender in foreclosure. A lender could potentially name themselves as trustee, or they could name a third party to be trustee. Oftentimes, the lawyer who is driving the loan documents, they act as trustee in the transaction. You would not want to name the borrower as trustee because there's a conflict of interest. Deed of trust references the note. So those two documents work hand in hand together, the deed of trust and the note. And in the deed of trust, it talks about the collateral. You're going to want a legal description inside the deed of trust, not just the street address, but a legal description. And it could be the lot and block and the city and the county of the property. It could be a meets and bounds description, which is a survey of the property, and it describes that property where it situates on the earth. But the deed of trust tells the world what is being used as collateral for your loan. The deed of trust is the document that's recorded. The note is not recorded usually, and the construction loan agreement is usually not recorded at the county records. But the deed of trust is always recorded because that deed of trust tells the whole world, hey, I am the first person that has right to foreclose on this property. No one else come and put your a lien against this property unless you agree to be junior to me. So The lending document, the deed of trust, also describes the responsibility of the borrower. And that borrower's responsibility is the responsibility to repay, but it also has other responsibilities that if you don't fulfill as a borrower, it constitutes a default. Very commonly, the borrower is responsible for maintaining insurance. They're responsible for making sure there's no toxins released on the property. They're responsible for making sure that the property is kept in good condition, and all of the vendors that are used to build the property are paid on time, etc. So the deed of trust is usually a very long document because there's a lot of responsibilities in being a borrower, and you as the lender have a lot of rights that are named inside that deed of trust. The construction loan agreement is this bilateral agreement between the borrower and the lender, and there's a two-party contract where the lender has agreed to lend in the future if certain obligations are met. And this is really key because as a construction lender, you don't give the borrower all the money up front like you do in a traditional loan. And the construction loan agreement says if you are a good builder and you do the things right and you're building in a workmanship manner and XYZ, you lay out all of the requirements that the borrower has to meet to get your loan draw in the future. And if the borrower doesn't meet those obligations, then you don't have to distribute the rest of the money. So the construction loan agreement references the note and the deed of trust, and this is very important. It tells the parties what you're going to build, the permitted use of funds, and when you're going to give the borrower the money. And again, it further clarifies what a loan default is. And so that as a lender is very important because you want to know when your loan is in default is sooner than later. And when it's in default, you want to foreclose quicker. So here is a typical draw schedule. So our company builds single family homes in Dallas, Texas. And here's an example of some homes that we built. These pictures are all from different homes, but you get the idea. The first draw is when the developer owns the land and has a plan to build. And so they would come to you and say, Mr. Lender, I would like to borrow $80,000 to build a $130,000 house. So that $80,000 secured by a $130,000 house is like a 62% loan to value. It's a pretty conservative loan. As a lender, you would be comfortable foreclosing on a 62% loan to value loan. There's plenty of protective equity there. What you don't want to do is lend $80,000 secured by a piece of dirt that isn't worth, $130,000. It's only worth $130,000 once they've done all of the work to the property to make it worth the final thing. So here you go. Your first draw is typically when you have the land for collateral, the piece of dirt, and the plans to build. And they say, I promise to build this particular house. Here you go. The second draw is usually when the foundation is done, all of the utilities are underground put in, and there's a valid building permit issued. You get the permit before you get the foundation, but the lender has usually delivered the permit and evidence of the foundation when they get the second draw. The third draw comes when the house is framed and there's a roof on the property. And then the fourth draw comes when the house is sheetrocked and all of the electric and the plumbing is in. And basically, all you need to do at this point is do the carpet and the paint and the appliances and the landscaping and the hardscape. But the house itself is pretty much done. This is a typical draw schedule. And the reason you have a draw schedule is as the home becomes more valuable, you lend more money. Or to say that backwards, you will only lend more money as the parcel gets more valuable. And so your $80,000 loan is $20,000, then $40,000, then $60,000, then $80,000 over time. And your loan draw increases as the collateral increases. One of the great things about it being a construction lender, very oftentimes you can negotiate with the borrower to pay you interest on the full $80,000 loan, even though you've only lent them or only $20,000 has left your bank account. you're actually earning interest on all $80,000. And the reason that makes sense is because as a construction lender, you're holding the funds for the benefit of the borrower. And so you're not going to go use those funds somewhere else. You've got them in a bank account sequestered for the borrower's use. And you could potentially earn a token amount of interest while that money is sitting in your bank account. And if you're double getting interest by lending that money out to the borrower. So that money is effectively in two places at the same time. So after the home is built and you're getting evidence that the home is being built through photos, through inspections, etc., then the borrower says, it's time to pay you off. I'm ready to pay off this loan. And a construction loan could be paid off in parts. This is what's kind of unique. Or a typical private loan, you lend someone $80,000, and when they're done, they pay you $80,000 plus interest, and that's it. In a construction loan, you might set it up for to be lent against or lent to build, let's say 3 or 4 or 5 houses. And so that money, it gets repaid to you, but you continue to hold it for the borrower's benefit to be lent out at some point in the future. So here's the process. When the house sells and you're looking to be repaid off, or your note balloons, meaning all of your principal and interest are due at that time, then the borrower requests a payoff. They say, Mr. Lender, I'd like to pay you off. How much do I owe you today? A professional borrower is going to calculate that amount for you and then just ask, is this how much I owe you? And then you agree. So you calculate your interest proration by first starting with the daily interest the cost, and that's your interest rate. Let's say it's 10% times the loan amount. So let's say your loan amount was $300,000. Then your interest rate, 10% times your loan amount, $300,000 is a $30,000 loan, or $30,000 interest per year divided by 365 days is roughly $82 a day interest. So then let's say you borrowed the money for 100 days, then you take the daily interest, which is $82 times the number of days 100, then your interest proration would be $8,200 is your benefit or your interest cost of money that you would charge on that money. So you would tell the borrower, I want, if it's a full release, you want all $300,000 back plus your $8,200 in interest, then that's a full release. Or you could say, this is a partial release. I want my $8,200 of interest and I want $150,000 back to release parcel number 1, but I know you're also building parcels 2, 3, and 4, so you can keep that $150,000 loan, or maybe even if it's not, the borrower doesn't keep it, the lender is going to keep it for their benefit, and so the loan is not paid off. So when that release of lien is a document that's signed by the lender, it's notarized by the lender, and it's filed with the county, and it basically reverses, or it removes the impact of the deed of trust. And so as the borrower, I give you a deed of trust. Once I've paid you back, you give me a release of lien. I file a release of lien, and now the property is free for someone else to buy it and put a lien on the property. Being a construction lender can be complicated, but it is really a fantastic way to make great rates of return, great profit as a construction lender. I would love to help you as a listener either be a borrower or a lender of construction funds. If you would like to learn more about the subject, you can visit my website, hasslefreecashflowinvesting.com. Go to the ebooks page, ebooks tab, find the ebook Secrets of Hassle-Free Cash Flow Lending, or the full URL is on your screen here. Put in your name and your email and download my book, free book, Secrets of Hassle-Free Cash Flow Lending. Or if you are ready to go, you would like to borrow funds, or you have money that you would like to invest, I would say a minimum loan size is going to be somewhere around $50,000. But if you do have money to lend, either in your self-directed IRA or cash to lend or a combination of the two, we constantly have loan opportunities on our desk looking for new investors to lend. So give me a call at 866-931-9149, extension 1, or send an email to David at hasslefreecashflowinvesting.com, and we can talk about your particular situation and what would be a win for you and what kinds of lending opportunities you'd like to take advantage of so that you can earn uh, really great rates of return, great rates of interest on your money in a very conservative way without the hassle, right? Being a lender should be hassle-free. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. If you've got questions, please reach out to me. And there's tons of great free education on my website, hasslefreecashflowinvesting.com. We also have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe and be the first to be notified when we post new videos on our YouTube channel. You can find access to our YouTube channel if you go to our website, hasslefreecashflowinvesting.com, and then there's a link to our YouTube channel. Also, be sure to sign up for our newsletter at hasslefreecashflowinvesting.com, and you'll be notified of great education opportunities as well as investment opportunities as they come up. Thanks again, everyone, for your time, and you have a very prosperous day.